Hello, my name is Thomas Brush. I am an indie developer. I made a game called Pinstripe, and it was released on console and on Steam. And I also made a game, I'm working on a game called Once Upon a Coma, and that was kickstarted this year. So I had a little Q&A yesterday on Twitter, and here I am answering those questions. I also asked Patreon supporters to ask me some questions, and basically the questions range from anything from what's your favorite color all the way over to how does an indie game developer make money, how do you market yourself. And so I just want to be honest with you guys and tell you everything that I've learned about the indie game industry. I've been in this thing for almost a decade, and I've definitely screwed up a lot of things in regard to releasing games, but I've also learned a lot. And I want to share that with you so that you don't have to make the mistakes I did. So let's just get started on these questions. I'm going to favor patron supporters or Patreon supporters over Twitter followers just because they're supporting me financially. If you want to be favored and sort of cut the line and get in the front for the next Q&A, head on over to Patreon and just become a supporter. You can give $1, you can give $5 or $10, and we'll for the next Q&A. You'll be at the front of the line. So let's get started. This is from Matt Parrish, and let me zoom in here. Can't really read that. Okay, Matt said on Patreon, he said, when you were initially building up your following, what was your method for getting current followers to engage and share your game with friends? I don't have a ton to say on this because it's such an organic thing. It's so hard to pinpoint exactly how to get engagement and on what platforms. I noticed that Twitter and Kickstarter, a great way to get people engaged is to ask their opinion about something. So instead of just saying, look at my stuff, retweet please, what you could do is say, what do you think about this? Or here's a character from my game, what should his name be? Or something that I did that was really fun. For Pinstripe, the game is about a minister who goes to hell, and it was released on console last year. But what was really fun about Pinstripe's Kickstarter campaign is I said, hell is a place where ... basically fill in the blank. And I offered them an animated GIF that they could click on, and this was in an email. They could click on the animated GIF. It was an animated GIF from the game, and it would auto-populate a tweet, and they could fill in the blank. So hell is a place where you never get your thirst is never quenched, or something like that. And it would hashtag the game, and it would also put a link to the Kickstarter campaign in the game. So people, when they have the opportunity to offer their opinion about something, they're going to be engaged. And this is just, I guess, human nature, right? And I'm the same way. If I want to be part of someone else's social media posts, I want to express my opinion about something, and I want to feel heard. So whatever you're doing on social media, if you want engagement, make sure you're thinking almost from the perspective of what would you want, and what kind of participation or activities would you like to participate in on social media? What would make it fun for you? So that's a great question, Matt. Matt also had a side question here. He said, how did I approach getting the word out for my games and growing my email list? I gotta say, I've been thinking about this question for a couple days now. I don't really have a good email list, and I haven't really thought of or convinced myself that I need to grow it. And I know that I should. I just know that email lists work really well for certain industries. And I would just ask you guys, what do you think about email? I mean, for me, like, maybe I need a little bit of convincing as to why email is an important thing. My list is small. I think it's got like 500 people on it. And I just have a subscription sort of field on my website, and that's about it. So I'm sorry I can't answer your question there, Matt. Colin Ryan, you said, how do you balance work, and this is on Patreon, how do you balance work and personal life when engaging in a project like this? I'm considering switching to a work from home model, but I'm scared that I will easily get distracted. Man, you probably will. That's what's so tough about working from home, is it's so hard to stay focused, which I'm working from home right now. I'm actually in a garage. I moved out of my home office because my My daughter, she's 5 months old now. She was screaming her head off for probably every day for a month or two. And that's okay. That's what babies do. But I was right next to the living room and I just couldn't focus. So I moved to the garage, did a full renovation of the garage. So your question, Colin, I think is basically, how do you manage that? And there's two ways that you can manage working from home. The first thing that's really important is to isolate yourself from your family. And that sounds so bad, doesn't it? To say, don't talk to me, I'm working. But it's true in the sense that everyone else who's not working from home, they have that leisure, or not that leisure, what am I trying to say? They have that luxury of family not interrupting them. And so make sure that there is an agreement between your girlfriend or your spouse or your kids that they will not interrupt you. And an easy way to do this is first have the conversation. But second, find a place in the home that's far away from your family. So for me, I'm in the garage. There's a hallway between me and the living room. I can close both doors. And it just feels far away from the home. And that's important when you're especially when you're being creative. It's really important to feel far from home. And it makes it so much more special when you go home. The commute home from work, when I used to work at a marketing agency, I had a 30-minute commute. I could just detox almost and get my mind back to being a family guy, and that 30 minutes was also a time for me to just kind of relax and shrug off all of the pressure from work. The second thing that you want to do to ensure that you're efficient when you're working from home is you really need to convince yourself through certain methods that you're a professional, right? So what I used to do when I first started working from home, this was about 3 years ago, I'd just work in my pajamas. I didn't take a shower. I know that's gross. I didn't even brush my teeth sometimes. I wouldn't even get ready for the day. I would just go straight to work, get a cup of coffee, go straight to work, and work all day in my pajamas in kind of a messy environment. It gets to a point where, especially if you want to be a productive human being, it's pretty depressing and you forget that you're a professional. You almost feel like you're on summer break. And that sounds exciting, but again, it's depressing if you want to be productive. So I would say just make sure you're taking care of yourself, look great, put a pair of shoes on. That's a funny thing for me, actually. I just started wearing shoes to work. I walk into the garage and I put on a pair of shoes because for some reason it makes me feel more professional, because I wouldn't go into a regular office barefoot. So why would I go into my home office barefoot? And I know that might sound a little crazy, but it works for me. Also, what I do is I have posters that I hang around the office, posters of my games and my artwork. And I also have an intern coming to the office and working for me. And I asked him what his favorite quote was and his favorite game. And I put together a really cool poster and had it printed at Vistaprint. That quote and also that artwork, just to make him feel, and also it makes me feel like this is an environment for employees and an environment for being creative. It's not a home, it's a professional environment. So really you want to trick your subconscious into thinking you're not at home. And if you can do that with your environment, changing your environment, making your office look professional, I'd say absolutely go for it. Okay. Next question here. This is from Powell, and again, this is on Patreon. Powell, I hope I'm saying your name right. It's not Powell, it's Powell. How did you manage to learn everything you need to finish Pinstripe? I've been trying to figure out the answer to this question. I was reading it before I started recording, and it's such a broad question. I think that for Pinstripe, it was just learning on the job for 5 years. I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't a very good coder. Just figured it out and went with it. I think the best way to learn is to just make sure that you're passionate about what you're working on. So for example, if I were to make a game, if I were to say, I'm gonna make a racing game, well, I hate racing. I hate NASCAR, I hate stuff like that. If someone wanted me to make like a sports game like that, I would hate it. Well, it would be important for me, especially if I was learning how to make games, to make sure I didn't make a game like that. Don't make a sports game. Don't make like a puzzle game, anything like that. I am really passionate about adventure games. I'm really passionate about uncanny, weird games. And it's important for me to choose to work on those kind of passion projects, especially while I'm learning. Otherwise, I'll get bored and I'll quit. So whatever you're working on, whatever you're learning, if it's you're learning how to write music for games or learning how to code for games, just make sure you are passionate about it, because you really need to be in it for the long haul. It takes a long time to learn how to make games. I'm not going to sort of dodge and beat around the bush there. It takes a long time to learn games. So make sure what you're working on, you're passionate about. That was a really good question, Paul. I appreciate it. All right, let's go to Twitter. So again, if you want to sort of get in the front of the line of these Q&As, because I'll be doing a lot of these Q&As, just go over to Patreon, subscribe for $1, or if you want to do $5, $10, whatever. I will put you in the front of the line and answer your question. All right, let me open up my questions for Twitter here. Great response or questions on Twitter. We had a huge response to this Q&A. I really appreciate you guys being engaged. Nothing makes me happier than hanging out on Twitter and seeing all these questions. So let's start at the top here. Somebody at Oscar Barta, you asked, what do you think about cloud gaming? I don't really have an opinion about cloud gaming, but you also asked, should Steam be the only platform indie games distribute through? Absolutely, 100% no. And I would say in the current gaming environment, you might not even want to release on Steam. It's a hit or miss kind of thing lately. Over 7,000 games were released in 2016. I mean, that's nuts. I think that's right. Let me know in the comments what the correct statistic is, but I think it was over 7,000 games. So to try and make a ripple in the ocean of Steam, it's almost crazy to think about, even trying that. If you have the capability to launch on Steam, go for it. But I would say this is going to be totally incorrect in a year, because the game industry changes all the time. But I would say right now, focus on Nintendo Switch. Focus on Nintendo Switch. It's a great market. I have a friend of mine who, I can't say who it is, but I do have my sources, I promise. He said that he's making more money on Switch than Steam. And that's amazing. I would say absolutely. If that's the case, give it a shot, go for it. But if you can launch simultaneously, absolutely go for Steam, Switch, Xbox, PlayStation. Yeah, so no, Steam should not be the only platform indie games get distributed through. Nintendo Switch is just great. I love it. It's also a really fun platform. I actually just got a Nintendo Switch last week, and it's super fun. Okay, how do you deal with criticism? This is from Jellicle Kitten. It's so hard to read these Twitter handlers because they're just weird. Jellicker Kitten. Wait, what does that say? Jellicle Kitten. That's the name. That's a beautiful name. Okay, how do you deal with criticism, Thomas? Let me talk about criticism. This is my favorite topic on planet Earth, because I like to think about, this is going to sound weird, but I like to think about life as a video game, okay? And the only way to upgrade your life is to do things that make you suffer. That sounds, what's the right word? Bad, but it's not. It's actually a wonderful thing. So for example, if you suffer through a workout once a day, you'll likely grow muscle, become healthier, become stronger, become more attractive. It's a response to suffering. And I think the same is true for criticism. So if somebody critiques you, it's a way for you to find out a potential flaw in yourself, a gap, let's say, in your creative potential. And if you can find a solution for that gap, maybe the person making the critique could offer up a solution as well. It's a way for you to grow and become a better person. So the best way to deal with criticism is not to let it hurt you. You got to get over that. So the way to get over it is to embrace it and also pursue it. Pursue critique daily. If people aren't critiquing you, you're probably not being yourself. Something I found out with not only making games, but also doing these vlogs. If I don't get a negative comment, I think, well, I probably wasn't myself. Because there's no way to be completely honest with somebody and not come across in a negative way to at least someone. You have to be yourself, and that's going to result in critique. Now, the beauty of critique, again, is that it makes you a better person. It's just like working out. So in order to combat the negativity, that negative feeling about critique, you just have to receive it a lot. And hopefully you'll learn to take it, your medicine almost. It's not fun at first, but it really is like medicine. It makes you a better person. You're not going to release good content if you don't embrace critique. I promise you. Trust me, I know how painful it is. When I launched 2 months before I launched Pinstripe, I had 200 beta testers play the game that I worked 5 years on. 5 years of my life. And I said, okay. To these 200 people, I said, okay, give it a shot. Tell me what you think and rate it. And I had all these questions, this questionnaire. And I swear, like when I opened up that survey and I saw all those responses, I immediately ran out of the room, grabbed a glass of whiskey, took a couple shots, and then went back and started reading the critique because I couldn't handle it. It's a lot to handle. Now, that's not a good way to handle criticism. You shouldn't drink to handle criticism. But my point is I totally understand how it feels. But now I'm different. I really am different. I can take critique. It's not a big deal. I understand that my games are not who I am. It's not my identity. A lot of us, our career is who we are. And if our career fails or we get critiqued in our career, it affects our identity. And that sucks. So that's like the third solution to this is do not make your creative profession your identity, because you will not be able to handle critique. If someone was critiquing your infinite existence, who you are, your being, it's going to hurt you every time. But if you make your existence, whether it's your faith or maybe it's your family, it's going to hurt a lot less to get critique. So find meaning and identity outside of, honestly, games sometimes can be really shallow. So that can possibly be a really shallow reason for existence if making games or being creative is your sole identity. Okay. All right, I have time for one more question on Twitter. Again, if you guys want to get to the front of the line, I know I sound like a salesman here, but Patreon really helps. I've got to be honest. It really helps. So head on over to Patreon, subscribe, and you can get to the front of the line with these questions. I love doing these Q&As, and I'd love to get to your questions. So just head on over to Patreon. If you feel like being generous today, that would be amazing. Thank you. Okay, one more question. That's it. I'll answer this one really quick. Somebody said, would I ever make a second Pinstripe game? All I can say is some stuff is in the works. I'm not saying it's a second game, but some stuff related to Pinstripe are in the works, and I'll keep you posted. Sorry, excuse me. Let's see. Are we ever going to get... No, I don't want to answer that. How do you come up with ideas? No. Did you listen to music when you're developing games? No. Yes, I do, but I'm not going to answer that. What time of day overall do you feel most productive? Or does it just vary from day to day? I feel the most productive, sorry, microphone. I feel the most productive. It's so sad. Probably 4 to 5 p.m. And it's sad because that's why I always end up working late. That was a really unsatisfying answer. Should I answer another question? I think I should answer another question. You guys posted so many good questions. There's like 1 billion here. Maybe I should, not 1 billion, maybe 20. Okay. Ooh, this one's fun. How do you find the courage/motivation to start your game development when you're scared of failing? And that was from Peak Soul. I don't know how to say that, but that's a cool profile picture of Peak Soul. It really comes back so avoiding that feeling, that fear of failure, it comes back to embracing failure. So this is going to sound so cliche, but I really do pursue failure. I pursue failure as much as I possibly can. There was this book, I think it was 40-Hour Workweek. No, The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. And one of the things he recommended doing in facing fear is just, I think this was Tim Ferriss, is just lay down in the middle of a crowd. Just lay down on the ground for like 5 minutes. The point is that you need to become calloused towards feeling embarrassed. And the best way to become calloused is to just do it. Just do things that scare you. I gotta admit, tonight I was supposed to go to MMA training, and one of my fears/goals this year is to fight in the ring and get beat up. That's my goal. The reason I want to do that is not because I'm a weirdo. It's just because it scares me and I want to face my fears. I didn't go tonight because I was scared. So that's the thing, right? Is if you don't face your fears, you're going to be afraid of it next week and the week after. So when it comes to game development, the best thing to do is just get it out there. Put content out, start tweeting animated GIFs, and ask for people's opinions. And if you get negative responses, that's great. That's what you want. You want people to critique you. And even if people are trolling you, good for you. The worst thing you can do is put out lukewarm content that gets 1 like and no comments. Okay, whenever I post these videos on Facebook, for some reason Facebook is much more negative than like YouTube. YouTube comments are always great. I always get negative comments on Facebook, like critiquing my face or critiquing the thumbnail or critiquing how I talk. That's kind of a good thing because it means that people are watching the content, and I've done enough transparency and honesty on my part to get people involved. And that is what marketing is. You want people to act on emotions that you've stirred. So market your indie games honestly and transparently. Don't be afraid of negativity. Actually, I would say shoot for it. Shoot for negative comments. See what happens. All right. That's everything. That's not everything, actually. I'm lying. Those are maybe 1/20th of the questions that were asked. But let me just pitch it one more time, please.
If you head on over to Patreon, I will put you first. You will get first in line. Thank you so much.